I was at Harbor Freight looking at these 16-inch pry bars that I thought I'd be able to really pretty easily modify into a nice little pair of blacksmithing tongs. My plan was I would bend this little hook back and then flatten this area off into a boss and just pin two of them together, just like that. You got a really nice pair of tongs. But as I was on my way out with a little bundle of them under my arm, I spotted these, which for obvious reasons caught my eyeball. 16-inch end nippers. These are obviously like 95% a really nice pair of blacksmithing tongs. Hardened tempered steel, they just bounce back, they don't bend, and of course they're hardened tempered steel. They're made to clip through nails. Best part to me is though, 15 bucks. That's literally half the cost of the cheapy Chinese blacksmith tongs that you can get on Amazon. I think with minimal modification, I'll be able to get these things going. And then once I got them tongified, I'm gonna forge myself a little, maybe not so little chopper that I can get some yard work done with. Sounds like a pretty fun day to me. So here you go. Hope you guys like it. So here is our first and simplest modification. And buddy, let me tell you, if you're a beginner knife maker and you're starting out with this, you're living large. When you see the kind of stuff that the rest of us started out with when we were kids, or I mean, bro, stealing and destroying your dad's groove joint pliers, sneaking away with your mom's little pink needle nose pliers that she has in her neoprene tool case she never touches. This is bougie, not gonna lie. Here's a modification. Here's how we turn this into this. Unmodified, we're going from about a 2.5-inch gap between the reins when the jaws are fully shut over to about a 1/16 gap in the jaws when the reins are fully shut, and that gap in the jaws is not a mistake because this is the perfect recipe for deadlocking 1/8-inch steel that is not going anywhere all the way up to about 5/30 seconds. The limiting factor being the gap in between the reins when you're actually gripping onto your material. If I grip onto this 3/16 here, that's a little bit too much of a gap for me. Let's not even talk about this 3/8. That's completely unmanageable. Which, if you're a beginner knife maker, this and this is probably the only thickness of material you're gonna have to use for a little while. So these things are gonna be absolutely awesome for you to start out with. So here's how we modify them. Just close the nippers, no tension whatsoever. Then we're gonna put something flat on the reins. I got this 25-pound weight plate, and we'll clamp it down. From there, we use this bevel as a guide for our cutting wheel, and we just lightly pass through there. This is why I emphasize, don't have any kind of tension here when you're cutting through. Don't clamp this thing up in a vise and try to cut through with your angle grinder, because the second you pass through, this thing is going to grab onto your blade, and if you're very lucky, the only thing that'll happen is it will destroy your blade. That's the best case scenario. You just pass through nice and easy, you unclamp it, you close the tongs, you clamp it up again, and you pass through again, and you repeat until you get to this point. And then you can pull the rubber handles off. I would say keep them on while you're doing the clamping and cutting, because they kind of make the clamping easier. Now, the reason why we do it this way instead of just, you know, opening them up and cutting this off and then cutting this off is because you do want to maintain that nice even gap. This will maximize your surface contact and make deadlocking a lot easier. So to get them to this point only took 5 passes with the 1/16 cutoff wheel. Like I said, just so easy, and this is going to be such a blessing to start out with. This little pair of tongs here is going to give you about an 8-to-1 mechanical advantage. That means when you squeeze them shut with 10 pounds, it's biting down at 80 pounds of force. And I'm willing to bet you can probably squeeze harder than 10 pounds. Now, as absolutely awesome as these are for a beginner, the reason I consider them to be a beginner tong is because the more and more you progress in your skill and your standards, the more and more you're going to be thinking about marring your workpiece. Marring is putting dents and scratches in your workpiece where you don't want dents and scratches, and having such a teeny tiny contact surface as well as these like really sharp edges, these are going to do exactly that. Now, for a beginner who's just getting a handle on technique or just wants to swing a hammer and hit a hot thing, I mean, who cares? But if you're like getting up there, or maybe you even want to start selling stuff, it's something you're going to have to start thinking about. So here's the next level of modification. Okay, I don't ever really forge 1/8 inch. So, oh wait, that's not true. That armor was 1/8 inch. All right, I don't plan on forging 1/8 inch anytime soon, so I'm not gonna size these for gripping 1/8 inch. I'm gonna make these for 5/30 seconds up to 3/16. But our next modification is adding little foot pads to the jaws so they don't mar the work. We gotta account for the thickness of those. So the foot pads are both gonna be a 1/4 inch thick, so that's a 1/2 inch. And then we'll have an 1/8 inch gap, so that is 5/8. That is how big we have to cut this gap. Wow, that looks like a lot. Let me check my math again. Yeah, geez, that's it. All right, let's do it. not good. Alrighty, one heaping helping of grinding and brushing later, I got them looking almost halfway to okay. But what's important is that they work, and boy do they. Check out this gap, actually. Perfect. It's epic. Here's a 3-foot length of 1/4-inch steel, 1 inch wide. Woo! Obviously, with how wide the reins were with that grip, I don't have the measurements quite right. The foot pads ended up being more than 1/4 of an inch, so I got about an inch gap with them closed, so I have to make one small change. So basically, when this is nice and hot, I'm gonna dunk the jaws and the boss into this big bucket of water here so they don't deform while I'm forming the reins. And I got this 7/30 drill bit that I'm gonna pinch. I'm gonna squeeze the reins together until they touch, so I'll have a 7/30 gap with the reins touching. This little test fit going on with the hose clamp, and I gotta say, I can't really say I like how it's looking so far. The glaring issue, the blade turned out way smaller than I thought it was going to. I think this, the gigantic palm swell, I mean, this is a full-size axe handle. Just looks kind of goofy to me. It looks like actually, it kind of looks like an old pirate pistol. Yeah, I don't know. When I cover this part up with my hand, that just looks a lot nicer to me. It's like some kind of Japanese something or other. I just think that'll look a lot better. It does kind of suck cutting away all this nice craftsmanship here, but I've had this thing collecting dust on my shelf for years at this point. I don't think I'll miss it too much. Oh baby, check that out. That was the move for sure. That one little move really took me from this build is kind of embarrassing to actually something I'm like excited to show people. I haven't even cleaned up the blade yet. This is pretty cool. I will say, not the sharpest edge I've ever pulled off. That wasn't bad. There's a little something right here that keeps catching. Oh. Well, either way, it's for chopping sticks in the backyard. I'm not shaving my baby's head with it. Nah, I probably shouldn't. This is a lot more than I'm expecting to use it for, but I mean, this will prove it's metal. Or break it, that's fine too. Not much weight behind this thing. This thing's definitely for much smaller pieces of wood. I feel like that made it sharper. I mean, I'm not gonna be doing that very often. If at all, I would use a hatchet instead. But for stuff maybe like a quarter this size, this thing will be awesome. That was the video. Hope you liked it. By the way, I'm looking for sponsors, paid sponsorships only. I've got a family. I'm not gonna do a 1.5-minute ad read to 100,000 people in exchange for a box of potato chips. You know who you are. Don't talk to me. Thanks. Bye.